In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth, the sun, the moon, and the stars. He created man in his image and likeness, to rule over the fish of the sea and the birds of the air, over all livestock, over all the earth, and over all the creatures that move along the ground. God, in his wisdom and part of his grand design of the universe, created a place situated in the southern suburbs of an ever-growing city of gold, Johannesburg, a place called Rosettenville, which in the 1940s was a vibrant area filled with enthusiasm and young people and middle-class families.
Reverend James Walker in 1939 asked Mr. and Mrs. Herbert Wood, a newly wedded couple, to commence a Sunday school in Rosettenville. This they duly did, sharing the premises of the Rosettenville Post Office. And so a unique arrangement evolved, with the building being used for post office business during the week and then being used for Sunday school on a Sunday morning. God laid on the heart of a Mr. Sermon of Sermon Brickyards that a Baptist church should be established in this growing area. He duly bought the first church building at 219 Prairie Street, just off the corner of Geranium Street, where the Rosettenville Junction is now situated. In the 1920s and 1930s, this had been the home of a congregational church. Mr. Sermon offered this property to the Central Baptist Church on condition it be used as a Baptist church. The Reverend James Walker, the minister of Central Baptist Church at the time, enthusiastically accepted the offer. Central decided to appoint an assistant pastor to be paid out of their own funds to establish the new church at Rosettenville. Then, on the 9th of March 1941, Reverend Dr. John Porter was inducted into the pastorate and was appointed the first full-time pastor of Rosettenville Baptist Church.
The first members of the church, 14 in all, blended themselves together and resolved to serve the Lord with zeal and joy. They prayed, witnessed, worshipped, and evangelized until the district rang with the gospel message. The Sunday school grew, the women's work flourished, and many young people were saved. The Reverend Porter continued to serve at RBC until 1945, when the Reverend Eric Rowland was inducted into the ministry of the church. In 1948, Donald McPherson, a businessman who was happily settled in his career with a promising prospect, answered the call after being encouraged by Dr. John Porter to Rosettenville.
The church at Rosettenville has continued to be led and pastored by a number of dynamic, influential, and godly men who have molded and changed the lives of so many who have passed through its doors. The Reverend Donald McPherson served from 1948 to 1960. He was succeeded by Reverend Reg Codrington Sr., who served from 1960 to 1965. He was followed by Reverend T.J. Wilson from 1965 to 1972. Then, for almost 2 years, the church was without a pastor, but led by godly men who kept the church going. Among them, the well-loved Frank Edens. Reverend Paul Jones came to pastor the church in 1974. He still serves in this church as an elder and pastor to the seniors. He often preaches at Queenshaven, Mothwa, and on occasion at Rosettenville. Paul and his wife Ethne, who is one of the longest-serving members of the church, continue to be an inspiration to all. Their son David is now church secretary, and their grandchildren, William and Karen, are also actively involved, making them fourth-generation members of this church, as Ethne's parents were also early members of RBC. It was during Pastor Paul Jones's tenure that the Johannesburg City Council decided to expropriate the church property to establish public parking. Negotiations were entered into, and quite a stir was caused when it was announced in 1976 that the council would acquire the property.
The building of the new church, situated at 8 Albert Street, Townsview, began, and on the 26th of June 1977, the final service at the old church took place. This was conducted by late Reverend Rex Matthey, then principal of the Baptist Theological College, and an ex-member of the Rosettenville Church, as well as being one of the great characters in its history. The doors of the old church were locked by Mrs. Winnie Matthey, Rex's mother, who was one of the founder members of the church. Although the church was now situated in Townsview, it was decided that the name remain Rosettenville Baptist Church. Pastor Paul was succeeded by the Reverend Dr. Jan Fink, who served until he left to take up a lecturing post at the Baptist Theological College in 1994.
On the 5th of January 1995, Reverend Bruce Davey, now serving in Switzerland, took over the reins at RBC. And for the first time in its history, RBC had 2 full-time pastors, the second being the Reverend John Abramser, whose father had been a youth leader here in the late 1960s. The two formed a powerful combination, both having particular skills with youth work. The number of young people attending the church increased by leaps and bounds. Finally, in 2000, the Reverend Darrell Soule took over as senior pastor of Rosettenville Baptist Church. The church currently has a membership of 309 and 458 adherents, many more than the original 14. There are also 86 ministries and works.
One of the first missionaries sent out by RBC in October 1959 was Elise Ressel, then Rawlinson, who we have the privilege of having here today. She answered the call and was sent to Kafulafuta in Lambaland, in Zambia. We are currently supporting numerous other missionaries. These include Mike and Linda van Vuren with OM, Mark and Les Harper in Mozambique serving with Provision, Frank and Joy Pretorius in Somerset West, John and Lorna Abramser in Balfour with J-Life, Eddie Andrews and Tabisa Mhlangu with Campus Crusade. We have been instrumental in planting of churches in Mondio, South Hills, Bracken Downs, Glen Vista and Berea, and are currently involved in the planting of churches in Grootvlei and Palm Springs.
We still have a vibrant Sunday school and youth work. Over the years, the nature of the work has changed. The church is now a multiracial and multilingual body representing the demographics of the area. We have a growing French-speaking congregation led by Reverend Jean Manzambe, and an African language ministry led by Reverend Sammy Lebalo. We continue to be an equipping church, with some of our former leaders being called to serve elsewhere in God's vineyard, among whom are Pierre Morel, Noel Edwards, Jack Miller, John Thomas, David Ganetsky, Stephen Pierce, Clive van Rooyen, Louis Marais, Stephen Mann, Grant Baston, Boki Petzer, Charles de Kivet, and Darrell Soul, our own current pastor.
Recently, the Reverend Andre and Belinda Mathieu went to Boksburg Baptist, Reverend Amin and Glennis Lincoln to Laudium, Shane and Bronwyn DeLonga have gone to Bethany Baptist, Pretoria, Gideon, a student pastor at Brackendowns Baptist, the Reverend Isaac and Melissa Pinto, who will be moving to serve in Port Elizabeth after the GIC.
The church continues to be a shining light after 75 years and is stronger now than ever before. May its light continue to shine, and to God be all the glory, honor, and praise forevermore. God bless Rosettenville Baptist Church. Amen.